GM, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Carlos Podcast, where I host interviews and discussions with creators, collectors, community members, and different players in the digital art world. Today we have an exciting guest, Francisco, also known as Far, who is a friend, artist, and entrepreneur. I can't wait to learn more from him about Gen art, his art career, which spans over 15 years, and more importantly, his recent projects, including the Taproot Wizards, which are one of the most anticipated projects on the Bitcoin Ordinals ecosystem. But before we start, I would like to remind you about the podcast/Twitter space dynamics. And basically every Monday, I'll record a Twitter space at this time, 6 p.m. UTC, and you can tune in to ask questions live. So if you want to ask questions today to Francisco, you can use the chat icon at the bottom right, and you can let us know also your feedback. And if you cannot tune in live, I will share the recording on my Substack newsletter, and also it will be available in the podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify. So I think that's it for the introduction. Let's get started. Francisco, how are you today? How are you?
Thank you for having me. We are a few of us here. Happy to chat with you.
How is the summer down there in Portugal? Must be nice, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, working here is not too hot, so it's pretty good. Very cheap.
Great. Far, I know, let's get started from the beginning. I know you have been, creating art for a while, but also you have a long career, not only in the practical sense, but, studying also art from a theoretical also point perspective. Let's call it formal education. Can you tell us a bit about your background and, the history, everything you have done from zero?
Yeah, so I have a formal education as a civil engineer, and when I was doing civil engineering, I was one of those that wanted to be an artist, but my father kind of like said, I mean, come on, dude, what the hell are you gonna do as an artist? He was very he thought it was like a joke, but he knew like I had like this kind of like I was painting and designing since I remember. He came from construction. Like my grandfather also was in construction. Everyone in my family was kind of like engineer in the construction side, and they were like, come on, dude, you gotta do this. So I did civil engineering, and while I was doing civil engineering, I started to become very interested into graphic representations. That was the only thing I was good at actually in the degree. So when I finished civil engineering, I became a professional civil engineer, and I actually can sign. Well, I can do like bridges and all this stuff. I will let you know which one I do, so you don't pass by. But then when I was finishing, I was like, okay, I need to pursue something more artistic, more creative. And then I thought architecture was a good degree. So the day after finish civil engineering, I got a scholarship, a Fulbright to do architecture in the Southern California Institute for Architecture, which was the most, I would say, like the most experimental architecture school at the moment in the world. A lot of the people teaching over there was either coming from the years at Columbia University, where they started to use animation software to create buildings, and some others would come from working from Frank Gehry, Himmel, Sam Hadid. So it was a very, very interesting school. And so I joined. I was just like very fascinated by software and all the 3D generated the stuff that we are surrounded by. And so I was pretty obsessed with things and the stamp of each algorithms in our built environment in everyday's life. And I was kind of like going to the stores and checking each product, or checking cars and trying to guess which software has been used to design it. So that type of level of obsession. And so by the time I was finishing the architectural degree, it was funny because I was just painting, in the school, and everyone was kind of like saying like, just go for it. This is very experimental. I wasn't doing architecture to be honest. But then I did for my thesis, I started to create these 3D worlds that they were come from paintings. And that project was called Inescapes. And then he won the best thesis prize. So everyone was kind of like very excited about it. Architecture scholars and architects, and it was kind of like a statement from this school to give the best thesis prize to a non-building, right? It was more like as a maybe like a landscape or 3D landscape creation. I mean, this is in 2011. Like right now, someone would say, okay, this is like a metaverse, right, or something like that. But yeah, so this was when I started my art practice down there. I was like, okay, I'm done with school here. I'm an artist right now, so I got an art studio, and I mean, even though like I had a job, architecture job, I was like doing this experimenting with software and painting and generative. Now we call it generative, but yeah, doing all the things with software. And yeah, so this is the foundation. This is where like I guess when I started. Then it just like then this is 2011. So then, like I was having shows here and there, and I thought like, okay, I have no idea about art history or what art is. Like I know a lot about making cool stuff maybe, but I need like a more foundational, let's say, knowledge of art history and more about art. So then I went back to school. It's funny. So I went back this time to Harvard because Harvard had this program that I applied to several programs. I got into MFAs and I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do an MFA, kind of old for this. And then at Harvard, they have this program that they will let you, they graduate the school of design, but they will let you do whatever you want. And you can tailor your program. And then, you get a degree. So I was like, okay, I go there. I went there and then I spent my time in between MIT, in the art school at MIT, and then also learning a lot about art history and in the art studio practice at Harvard. So it was a very cool.
I have a couple of questions. First, can you tell us what's MFA for those that don't know, like me? What is that degree?
It's a Master in Fine Arts. So basically, that's the MFA. Is like let's say you can study. This is more also like in the US system. Let's put it this way. In Europe also there is masters in arts, MAs, but in the US it's kind of like important. Like you can do your bachelor's in arts or something, but then the MFA is where you can like get your couple of years of a lot of critique, and this is where you come with your practice already kind of like develop a little bit, but then over there you shape it with and then you're ready to just like consolidate it. So it's kind of like an important degree.
Yes, now I get it. And you weren't sure at the beginning to get into arts formally, but what changed, after you got your degrees in civil engineering and in architecture? So it kind of inspired you after you saw that you had potential, after your thesis won the award, that kind of gave you the confidence to go for the MFA? And, or what was the reason that you decided to go for it?
Yeah, no, I wanted to I think this happens to a lot of people. Like, you're an artist, this is what it is, right? Like, this is what you are. So as I say, like, my family kind of convinced me. Like, I was, my parents never they didn't go to school or anything like that. They were just like a very, very old school. And then they were, I grew up in a village of 1,500 people, and they were like, man, like, what the hell is that? Being an artist. So they thought like an engineer was kind of like, okay, you're an engineer, so you'll be all set.
Yeah.
These are all the school thinking. So this is why I did it. But it's like, since day one, I met like architecture students. In architecture, you had the first year you had like some art classes. So one of my roommates, he was studying architecture, and I was doing his homework, and he got like that was the best degree he got. It was like all the class that I did his homework for. So I was like, man, I want to do architecture. Seems like a very good degree because it has this technical aspect, but also it's artistic. Yeah, because I really like the technical stuff. Like I always liked it. Like this is why I went to engineering school in a way. So yeah, I mean, like and then when I was doing architecture, it was just like I'm not the guy who is gonna be sitting here like putting restrooms on buildings. I was actually my job. I was doing stadiums, I was doing the concept. I was a concept designer for stadiums. I did like a lot of them in the US and like hundreds and all over the world doing for 3 years. And I was doing very well. I had like a very successful career as a stadium designer for a very, very short though. But then I quit. I was like in my late 20s and I was already like a very higher up in the doing. I won like a few big projects as a stadiums. I got the Atlanta Braves was one of them.
Oh, that's
And, I was like, okay, this is a moment like, or if I want to experiment something with art, this is the moment or not. If not, like, I'm just going to be doing this. So I say like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And my boss was kind of like, you're fucking crazy. But
yeah, and I
yeah,
can imagine because probably at that point might be harder, right? And if you did that from the beginning because you already
yeah.
had success, you were established. But that's awesome. I didn't know you were part of the design, the Atlanta Braves. That's is it the Turner?
I did the concept design. Stadium design is a very, very small, there's very few firms. And I got an internship working with the Dan Mees, who is the architect who designed the Staples Center. And he taught me everything. And very quick, I learned so quick. So in a few months, I was doing like this internship and then I jumped from internship to senior because I already was working I got like a full project right away, like for Philadelphia Eagles, was working for Magic Johnson when he tried to buy the Dodgers. Yeah, very cool project. So yeah, I was doing two things. Imagine like the whole stadium, the overall structure, what you see, and then also doing like experiential stuff. So I was involved also in some Super Bowls, a couple of them at least, and yeah, many other stuff. So was kind of it was very good. This is why also I do. I like to do these very large installations, and I like to do like a spatial stuff
Mm.
because I come from that.
Yeah. I remember, I mean, kind of a backstory how I met Par. We were both in Bright Moments, Mexico City, and there were many artists and collectors around. So you usually you start to chat with the people around you. And yeah, I remember you were saying that you were an artist, and what caught my attention is that you mentioned you created. I mean, you create your own smart contracts, and then you also show me your art, which were these 3D words or objects that you can actually play with your phone, right? With your iPhone, you could create this virtual reality stuff, right? I remember those. So yeah, that makes sense because that's kind of what you were doing back in your job. But for you decided then to quit your job and go for an MFA.
Mhm.
And how
Yeah. So I quit my job and then I spent like a couple of years, like let's say doing art shows here and there. And then, I was in Los Angeles and then I went back to Spain. I have a studio in Spain, very cool. And I was like, man, I need to go back to the US. I'm going to try to get apply to grad school and get some scholarships and then, get back in the game because this is like, what am I doing here? By the way, like I was already in crypto. This is like a 2016 or something like that. I already knew crypto. I knew already about the whole thing.
okay,
I was into it.
okay, that's interesting. We will get to
Yeah.
the crypto part. I know you are also a big part of the Bitcoin Ordinals community. But I have a couple of questions before we move to the Bitcoin and your recent projects. What do you think? Because I've seen many artists that are in the space right now, and they don't really have like formal educations, formal art education. So
Mhm.
with your MFA, can you tell us like what are the pros and cons, or what did you learn that you think is very important that some artists don't have the chance because they don't go for a formal education? They go practical, especially in the space where you have all the tools in your hands to, you know, create art, publish it. Many were, as you, like from an engineering background, or they were doing different things, especially in the generative art world. So what do you think are the advantages if you actually get the chance to study art?
So, well, first of all, I didn't do It's not called MFA. It's technically, it was very funny because I was shopping for MFAs and I got into very cool schools. And so I was in Los Angeles. It was my birthday and I made a party with a bunch of artists over there. And then, I got into Harvard, CalArts, and what are the Art Institute of Chicago. I was already interviewing at Yale. But then I was talking to my friends over there. I was like, yeah, I don't know what to do. And they were like, oh, you should go to Harvard because over there, there's Stephen Prina is over there. And I was like a big fan of Stephen Prina, but I was like, I thought like a Stephen Prina live in LA. But actually, no, he was in between LA and Harvard. So then I was like, I wrote to Stephen Prina and said, look, I got into this, but I'm not like really sure about going to Harvard. It feels like from LA to Boston, it feels like a very traumatic. And so it's like, yeah, come over and let's talk. So I met him over there and then he said, look, if you come over here, you can do your own program. So I'll do your own MFA. So basically I give you a studio here at the Carpenter Center, which is a beautiful building in Boston. It's the only building made by Le Corbusier. It's incredible. And then he was like, you can work with me. So that's my degree. I mean, I got the MFA education because I kind of like I made my own degree led by Stephen Prina. So yeah, first of all, so I don't have an MFA because I don't believe in a way. I don't believe in this institutionalization because the MFA, I think, going back to, and I'm coming back to what you're saying because it's related. So the MFAs, when you apply, you're like, okay, you need to apply to painting, sculpture, photography. It's very segregated. And, for many years, I didn't get into the MFA right away. So I applied, I think, like 2 or 3 years. And I was applying to painting and I was like, but I was working mostly digital, right? So sometimes they were saying like, well, maybe you should apply for photography because what you're making is kind of like it's digital stuff, but, deal this with photography. Or maybe you should apply to a sculpture. It was kind of like very lost, because everything is very, I believe into interdisciplinary practices. So yeah, I think back what I like about the space is that like it's very progressive. So anyone can come in and then no education is needed. Like first thing they ask you in the art world, it's like, where do you do your MFA? Right. Then if they don't, I remember that because, I had work and I had gallery visiting my studio and they were like, so where do you do your MFA? I was like, well, I don't have an MFA. And they were like, oh, okay. Yeah. We'll talk to you later. So basically it was like a blocker. And so this is why I like this. Like here it's like, okay, anyone that, if they do cool stuff and it's good, that's interesting. That someone that makes art and they didn't do an MFA, but still make like a cool stuff, they can get a living and they don't need to work through these established institutions, right? Like, so I thought that was very good for the space. Now, I think it's very positive. I think this is how it should be, very progressive space. What happened now is that, the space it got a little bit more like, oh, we want to be like an art world, So they're trying to emulate that art world and they are looking more for these stamps of validation. So this is when it's becoming a little bit, it's an emulation of their world. So I don't know if it is good or bad, but it's just like a different, like a very quick evolved. So before you had like this, like a space that anyone can do it. And now we have this, maybe because there is less buyers or people are having heavy bags, they want to protect the things that they collected, but there is a little bit of gatekeeping. This is the technical aspect of it. The MFA in the art world is like the gatekeeping. This is how you gatekeep your artist. And here, I don't know if it is that, but in a way, there is a little bit of this, some this validation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it goes back to your question, right? Like,
Yes, totally.
This word.
Totally. It makes sense. And I know what you mean about gatekeeping in the space. There has been multiple discussions about that and, big brands, big names coming to the space, which has their positive aspects as well. But yeah, it's kind of, as you said, gatekeeps and makes it harder for emerging artists to stand out. I mean, following to your point, and you have been also very critical about the curation in the space, right? And how it's done at the moment in Web3 in general. So can you tell us a bit about that? Because I think if you come from the traditional art world, there are certain rules or like a process for curators. Actually, that's a career. Many people study art history and art curation. So what do you think is missing in terms of curation in the Web3 or digital art? What do you think is missing at the moment?
Well, I'm critical always with everything. If I have an opinion, I don't think this is being critical. You should have the right to have an opinion about things. But yeah, with creation, I like the aspect on when we met, when I told you like, no, I done my own smart contract. I'm not part of any, I mean, actually to date, I haven't done anything with, yeah, I done the first thing I did a project with the expanded, that expanded with the curated by Anika. That's my first project that I did part of a platform. But I like the kind of like the Wild West type of thing, like you decentralized. So let's go for it, like a permissionless, a little bit what FS has. I like that. And but now, if you're gonna create, but let's do it well. That's my point. That's when I become I'm a little bit critical. And creation is what you say. Like there's people that they do this. It's kind of hard, actually, very hard. As an artist, like you create works, and then you need to create works, and sometimes you need somebody else to come to your studio and then do the creation for you. And there is amazing curators that they work in museums and galleries. And so my criticism is like, okay, you have these people, just bring them in. You want to do creation, just bring these people in. To be frank, this is artists. They don't make money. They don't make money, but they are not well paid. Maybe in their world. And if there's people here that they have resources, I mean, right now everything's kind of like dried up a little bit. But if they have resources, you can hire curators from the art world, and they do. This is what they do. Is they can do a good job, and they can go and do what they know to do, which is navigate through all their stuff that is out there, and then pull out like a cohesive shows. I think I mean, there is a successful stories of curators that, that move from the art world to Web3. I think that people are doing very well. And I don't think curation is something that is just like a popularity contest or voting or stuff like that. I don't think that works. Curation is a vision someone has. It's like an art piece. So yeah, I think a lot of the curation in the space is so attached to make it profitable. So they go like, okay, this artist sells. They have a lot of a Twitter followers. So let's put them in. So yeah, this is what I don't like. I think this is not curation. This is not serious. So if you're gonna do that, just don't do it. So that's kind of like my overall criticism.
Yeah. No, right. That makes sense. So since the space is so open and everybody has the resources to, share audience, share artworks, create their own platforms, websites, however you want to call it. Yeah, it opens the door for doing it without, previous research, or as you said, creating a storyline, or maybe becoming an expert curator in a field. Like now in the digital art space, there are different movements. And even in the movements like generative art, AI art, glitch art, there are subcategories. Now that the space has multiple years in the making, there is the possibility to actually have this sort of digital art history, which is very complex. And I think there aren't many people doing that. I think it's something that's needed. Many people mention that. And it's not easy, as you said, because the opportunities for curators aren't as big as for artists, right? But yeah, that's a great point far. So let's move on to the NFTs part. Was exciting to hear your start. I know you mentioned that you were in crypto already while you were studying, while you were working. But then, when did you actually look into NFTs and started to share your art through that medium?
Well, I was when Red Pepes were doing I was actually, which is funny. The other day I was in the spaces with a lot of the folks from the Red Pepes. I was very interesting because I saw this community back then in it was 16, 17, all this year, 18. I was on the site, I was an artist and doing things. I was actually working with some other folks that they were in the blockchain. We were doing things, but I saw these kind of these guys, and I was like, okay, doing my pepes and stuff like that. So I had some pepes, but I never submitted for them to put to the unofficial or the fake pepes and all that. So that was an interesting movement. I was thinking, I was like, man, this is very neat, very wild. But I never thought that was going to be, it was interesting, but I wasn't part of this. So I saw this on the sidelines. Now, in the following years, I mean, of course, I saw the crypto banks and all of that, but I didn't I was thinking like, okay, this is pretty cool. And I was involved in crypto into other communities, and I didn't think that this would be as its own market, like other coins and stuff like that. I always thought that the blockchain would be interesting as a medium for outside of the crypto. Um, let's put it this way. So I started to become very interested when I started to see people buying these NFTs, and when punks started to be like a more, it was like actually people buying a lot and paying a lot of money when G Money bought his punk. I was like, well, this is very interesting. And then it became a lot of volume started to come in. So I thought like, wow, this is actually the volume from shitcoins are going to NFTs. So I was just watching a little bit. And then certainly, I think it's 2021, I just dive into it. I started to say, okay, I'm going to do this. I remember I spoke with Kevin Rose. I was like, yeah, I'm an artist. I'm in this space. I don't know if I should do this or not. Like, he's like, yeah, you should. And then I had like a few collections that I did. The MC Escapes. This is an AI collection. It was a test. It was like 12 pieces. Then I did the Infinites as a test also, but it was like an stealth meme, but then it became kind of like a very popular because AC collector named the Infinites in the Forbes article that was talking about generative art and then this when generative art kind of like had like this big run. So yeah, I think that was 2021. I was like more like a doxer. This one I did like a more publicly my NFT journey. Before that, I was just fucking around here and there. I actually think I have like some AI stuff that I did. I need to find it. Like I put it in early 2020 and some of the AI stuff that I did, I don't know where the wallets are, but I minted some stuff, I think.
In which blockchain? That sounds interesting. Like the infinites that you mentioned.
Ethereum.
Ethereum. Okay. And
Yeah, I know the images exactly. I mean, literally, but I don't know where the wallets are. I'm trying to find where it is. Again, like it happened the same with the counterparty. Like I don't know where these wallets are, but I did a lot of stuff in counterparty. I'm very sure like I got some pepes, like stuff like that. I don't know where they are.
let's
One of those.
for those that aren't familiar with counterparty, when I wrote about Bitcoin Ordinals, I actually researched a bit in what you mentioned about Pepes and the crypto punks. So those were minted on Bitcoin, but there were like side projects, right, that were designed to operate
Yeah.
with Bitcoin. But eventually those projects, for one reason or another, didn't succeed. Nevertheless, some of those NFTs were bridged, right, to Ethereum, for example, like CryptoPunks. So in your case, you use this counterparty, and that's not around. It's not used anymore. It was a blockchain, or
No, people use it.
okay. And is it? Do you know, like more technically, is it a protocol, a blockchain? What is exactly counterparty for?
No, I think the high level is that it's attached to the transactions in Bitcoin, but then it has like you can store these links to the actual images. It's in the counterparty, so it's like a side chain. But yeah, it's at the high level, And now a lot of this is in MBL vault. This is where people are like But yeah, I think this is what is interesting now with Ordinals. I think a lot of these folks are coming to Bitcoin because it's interesting, same folks.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
But that was the origin. I mean, this is a very interesting community, very interesting works. Like, there's a lot of people involved there. Fantastic. This is part of it's very, I would say, the stuff that happened over there within these years is very native to the crypto culture.
Mhm.
I think it's very group, very nice group of people actually. Very, very thoughtful. This is already, it's gonna be like a lot of years after this. So this is like it's very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, for those, I mean, many of my readers are still trying to grasp, and also myself with Bitcoin Ordinals. Can you tell us, because I know you are part of the Taproot Wizards, which we will talk about that in a bit. But can you tell us why Bitcoin Ordinals is so exciting and why so many people are building on this ecosystem at the moment? Why Bitcoin Ordinals instead of counterparty on all these other services, let's call it that way, that, eventually at some point were used? Why is Bitcoin Ordinals special?
Well, in Counterparty, you don't actually store the data on chain. You store links to somewhere, to a server essentially. And which is a lot of the stuff on other chains like Solana and Ethereum. This is what it is. You basically is what is so-called pointers, right? So you're purchasing links to IPFS, which is that's pretty funny to put it that way. I mean, look, one of the value propositions of NFTs is that is a contract in between the artist and the collector, and there's a transaction being made, and the contract is on chain. It's just like a contract. So the art can be in a server, it can be in IPFS, or it can be like a physical, it's a painting. I mean, you say like, look, this is how you pay for it. Now there's another value proposition that is saying that the actual art is stored on chain. That means that it's immutable, it's in the blockchain, it's running in all the nodes or validators. So it's gonna be there forever until the blockchain disappears. Arguably, we can say like it will never disappear. So you don't need to worry about it. So I think on-chain is a very strong value proposition. And in a way, I think this is why generative art became so valuable for so many people, because basically in generative art, due to the scarcity of the ability to put things on chain on Ethereum, you can put code. So art blocks, for instance, they can store the code. Or the most, let's say, the best example is or no, it's not the best example, but maybe the most famous example would be like an autoglyphs. Like an autoglyphs is all on chain, generates the image, it's always there. And I think this is a very strong value proposition. So now in Ordinals, what happens like in Ethereum, first of all, like going to Ethereum, to put things on chain, Ethereum is very expensive. You don't have that ability to put that much data without spending a fortune. And now in Ordinals, what happens, you can put in Taproot arbitrary data assigned to transactions to link to Satoshi. And then the limits are, if you do it yourself, it's 400 kilobytes. And if you work with a miner, you can do it in like a full block, like a 4 megabyte, like we did with the Taproot Wizards. So that's substantially way bigger than anything else that you had before. And so I think this is very interesting because at the same time, Bitcoin is the most decentralized blockchain ever, and it's secured by proof of work. It's the most secure, decentralized. It's the most famous or known, the biggest brand of crypto also. And now you have more data to put it. So you don't need to do like a generative art or anything. You can just upload a JPEG if you want. So the JPEG will be forever over there. So I think this is very strong reasons for me, not alone. That was like a very strong reason for me to get excited about it. Of course, you have like a more argument in market wise. You can say like, okay, it's Bitcoin. There's more liquidity over there. You can sell your work. There's more people willing. I mean, there's more money than in Ethereum. And so that's it. But that market, this is harder to figure out. But technically speaking, I think this is why it's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I remember hearing some of the people in Bitcoin, the ones that are developing for Bitcoin and have been on Bitcoin for a while, mentioning that how is it possible that Bitcoin is the number one crypto coin in terms of users volume, and it's not used for the crypto economy, which is DeFi and NFTs, right? So now that's changing thanks to Ordinals. And yeah, there are many people that have Bitcoins. Right? So it's clearly in terms of volume, market wise, makes a lot of sense. What about the Taproot Wizards? That's one of the most anticipated projects on Bitcoin, probably the number one. Can you tell us why? I mean, you're part of it. You are the artist behind the Taproot Wizards. I know the team, it's an exciting team. Can you tell people here listening live and those listening later in the podcast, why are the Taproot Wizards special? What's exciting about them?
Yeah, the question, the why they are special. I mean, how you look at them.
Yeah,
they look special.
funny luck.
Yeah, I think
Funny luck.
it's very testy. It's a good story because I was talking to Dennis Porto, who wrote the article. I forgot the title, but yeah, Dennis and I, when I was at Harvard, I created a blockchain group in the graduate school of design. So we held meetings every week. Just a few people were talking about, we were interested in design, art, and because we were there and crypto. And then one day I organized a meetup with the business school. And over there I met Dennis Porto. He was doing an MBA. Dennis and I, since then, became good friends. And last summer, he told me like, hey, Udi and Eric Wall, they're working on a project about using something about a project with talking about the meme of the wizard. I mean, would you like to talk to them? They're looking for an artist. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I like the meme. I remember, I remember vividly. So yeah, we started to talk in August actually. And even though I think Casey was he was working on Ordinals over there, but I didn't know about it. But anyways, we were thinking about doing something. So we're talking about the wizards back then. So I actually kind of like made almost a full collection. And we're like thinking about, okay, now we need to do this for the Bitcoin culture, but we didn't know how to do it. So it was pretty funny because for months we were just talking. And then when Ordinals, I started to know more about Ordinals. And then Dennis, he wrote this article and then he sent me the draft. I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. I'll check it out in a couple of days or something. But then I went and checked it out when he sent me. I was like, shit, this is fucking cool. So then I sent a message to the America. It's like, man, I think we should, this is it. And then we got together, a bunch of people were there. And then we're like, hey, okay, let's call Luxor, the miners. Let's do a full block. Let's do something crazy. And this is how we did the big wizard. So I think, yeah, generally speaking, I think what is exciting about it is like Bitcoin has been like for many years. I mean, when I got into crypto, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, man, these Bitcoiners are fucking like, I like this a lot. I mean, I was like more prone to Ethereum and just the culture was kind of like more interesting. But I think what Udi and Eric wanted to change that. This is what they told me in summer. I was like, yeah, I'm down for this. I think this is a good fight. And this is like with the best thing we can do with JPEGs. So this is the mission, the core mission of the Taproot Wizards. I don't know if this is the coolest project or not. This is kind of like whatever people think about, or they can do whatever, they can think about whatever they want. Everything can be the coolest thing. But that's the mission that this project, and this is what represents, which is like the most important part of the wizard.
And the wizard, because I was reading, I think I was listening to Udi in a Twitter space. So the wizard was an ad that was posted on Reddit, and it was very simple, kind of like a paint made on Microsoft Paint, and it actually was very successful very early on, like 2012, 11 maybe.
And that 13, no, it was a competition. It was a competition for a meme to bring people, and then Maven's bot made it, and he didn't make it on Paint. All these years, I thought he made a Microsoft Paint, and then he told us that he did Photoshop. So I was like, man, when I was doing Taproot Wizards, I was like, imagine I'm working on MS Paint, and then he told us it was Photoshop. But yeah, but he did with a mouse on that, I guess.
And how did you made it? You made the wizards on Paint actually, or Photoshop? What did you use?
Photoshop.
Okay.
Yeah. I tested several things actually. I was trying to emulate this kind of like a low effort, I would say low effort, low resolution. Right. Yeah, I was trying a lot of things. It's kind of hard. Like, you're used to do like this super polished stuff. And then it's like, man, I need to just unlearn everything and then do this stuff.
Right. Especially when we look at your art, which is generative art, kind of virtual reality, 3D. I mean, you were designing stadiums in USA. So yeah, I can imagine it was complex to go back to Paint, Microsoft Paint or this Photoshop, but looking for this low effort looking wizard.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah. I like it because I mean, I'm down for the concept more than everything else. So, I mean, I'll do whatever, like generative, whatever it has to be done. I'm more interested into the concept. So I thought that was the interesting part of it,
Yeah, it's unique and it's a funny PFP, which represents a culture, let's call it that way, both of NFTs and Bitcoin. So that is an important aspect of it. And I would like to touch a bit more on your art, but just a reminder that we are almost over. I mean, it's a 1 hour space. I think we can continue talking, but I know you have your kids you have to put to bed. But a reminder for everyone, if you have questions for FAR, please, you can use the chat icon and feel free to ask any questions about Bitcoin Ordinals, his art, or if you have questions for the podcast, or if you would like to have a special guest in the future, just use the chat icon at the bottom. Coming back to your art, Far. So I know you have a couple of projects that are quite interesting. I know war games. You have been working on that for a while. Can you tell us what's war games and the mechanics that you designed?
Yeah, for war games, the premise was to do this participatory art. So normally you have in generative art, you use the randomizer to come out with the different outputs. And I thought that it was interesting to create the algo and then have these parameters and the ranges open to people to actually feel like it's finishing the pieces. So that was the experiment. And I mean, of course, when I started the war game, this is the premise now. I learned a lot from this is like an ongoing experimental project. And so, yeah, now of course, like when I did the war games, when I launched it, I didn't know that Ordinals was going to be like a thing. But now, after launching it, I started to get into the Ordinal. So now I'm very interested in experimenting with war games and Ordinals. So that's something that I have been experimenting. I haven't released anything yet because it's just everything like maybe like very experimental. But I would like to do that, like experiment with the recursive inscriptions and war games and putting things on chain. So yeah, I think this is participatory. I mean, this is the important part of this, like to get the viewer as be part of this, of the making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the collector is part of the creation of the pieces.
Yeah.
Similar to QQL or FX params. So it's a similar mechanic. Yeah. And you also have like a mint pass. I know I have a couple of those. So mint passes to get your piece. Nice. And these are created.
Well, they're more than mint passes are like they are passes to actually use the app. But I'm gonna come out with the actual how these are gonna transform into the piece. The difference in between FX has params, they have a different mechanics than QQL. You burn your pass and then this is what you get. That's the piece. You need to decide the piece you want. And then FX has params, you get the mint pass, and then you need to use it right before a certain time otherwise you're gonna pay more or something like that.
Yeah, there are taxes to keep your pass. Yeah.
No, this one there's nothing about it. I mean, you're part of this, like this up. I mean, you're not penalized or anything. There's no burning or anything like that. I mean, but yeah, I'm gonna do something like basically the people can create their own and then just have their own basically NFTs.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And
no pressure. Yeah.
And you have a studio, right? Called Fine. And that's so War Games was developed by this studio that you founded. And you also got into an interesting, very popular VC in crypto that kind of founded this company of yours. Can you briefly, because we're coming to the end, but I think it's important to mention this. Can you tell us about your experience and this VC that funded your company? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So what happened is that with Fine, the way you say it's a studio, it's an interesting way to name it. So when making these projects, I always have been collaborating with other people. I need to get like a technical people to help me out with the smart contracts, even with shaders and stuff like that. It's always a team effort. So I thought that putting this IP together and create this company that can bring all this stuff to other people, that there is no need to code and they can start create like a complex stuff. That was the premise of Fine. So we applied with Chelsea joined me doing that. So we applied to HSTC and then it was one of the companies that got into it. I think it was like 30 companies out of 9,000. They were interested into this no-code co-creation, those tools. So it was very interesting experience because it's bringing like these creators. It was a very different company than the rest of companies. The rest of companies, they're more hardcore, like application. They're making applications and services or infra. We were more like this creative studio that is creating IP, but also is creating these tools. So it was a very interesting. We learned a lot about actually how to make companies because this is what they're good about it, like about making companies. There was a very interesting 3 months. I mean, of course, we gain a lot of edge into this sense about how to, let's say, how to turn the creative practice into a company or I work in the creative economy. That was a very interesting, very formative 3 months.
Right. And probably were you the only artist in that group, or were there already other artists slash entrepreneurs in that cohort?
No, I was the only one. There was another firm that they were more, it's called Kiki, and they work with the makeup. So they are a little bit, they are in the creative field, let's put it this way. But no, I think I was very much the only one creator. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting because you get to this place with a lot of business people with a lot of experience, and you have this other kind of you think like an artist, you know the space
Yeah.
very well. So I think it's a good combination, and I'm sure you learned a lot from them, and just being surrounded by all these amazing minds give you so
Yeah. Very
much, so
interesting
much.
people.
Right. Well, far it was very exciting. I wish we had more time. I think we've covered plenty of topics. Your art career, Bitcoin Ordinals, which I hope people understand a bit more now. I know it's a complex topic, but the ecosystem is evolving very fast. There are better applications every day. Also, it was great to hear from you about your art practice, your experience, creating fine in your different art projects. Looking forward for the Taproot
Might I
Wizards.
say something about
Yeah.
something you say? So
Hmm.
we kind of like learn the hard way about putting JPEGs on chain with the smart contracts on Ethereum. But Bitcoin ordinals are way simpler. People say like it's complex, and it's like no, it's not. It's easier. Like it's easier from the developing side. It's easier for an artist. It's easier for everybody. It's just like we kind of like made up our mind to work with the smart contracts on Ethereum, but it's way more complicated Ethereum than that. You just need to go to Ordinals, like what Casey wrote on StartNet, ordinals.com, and read it. And it's very, and then it takes like 1 minute. If you don't know anything about Ordinals, you can go to where like a Gamma, and then inscribe. You basically upload your JPEG, send the money, and then that's it. It's pretty simple, and it's already
So
on
what's the
chain.
name? Is it
Yeah,
gamma.xyz?
Gamma has like a service, like Gamma.I is that Gamma.io. This is one of them. I mean, there's many, but if you go to create over there, and you can just submit an image or a text and then describe. It's very simple. I don't know why there is this kind of like a concept of things. Oh, it's so complicated. It's like, but it's not.
Yeah, you're right that it's way simpler these days. I remember maybe 5 months ago, there weren't many crypto wallets supporting ordinals, right? But that has changed radically over the past 2 months, 3 months. I think it's now I've seen multiple marketplaces like Magic Eden. You mentioned Gamma. I think Hero Wallet. It's a popular wallet. Can you maybe name a few resources far to close the space today that people can use to get into Bitcoin ordinals like marketplaces, crypto wallets, anything that you
Well,
find useful?
yeah, I think the best there is first you go to docs.ordinals.com. That's that's pretty. I mean, the ordinal theory handbook. Then you can in YouTube. There is a video of Casey explaining ordinals. I think she's here. Like we can make he can tell us more other resources. But I think there is this video from Casey rather more. I mean, ordinals, which is surprisingly this video in YouTube has like not that many views actually, and it's pretty well. He explained it very well what ordinals are, and yeah, those are the best to start with, and then after that you can go to the other stuff like this platforms and stuff like that. But I think it's not complicated. It gets Might get complicated, of course, but I think to begin with, to start to testing, scrap some things, you might lose them, but it's fine. It's testing it out. It's not that complicated.
Awesome. I'll link the video to the podcast.
Yeah,
So
I'll send it to you, and then you can link it.
fantastic. Far, thanks so much for your time. It was a interesting conversation. And one last thing before we wrap it up. When are the Taproot Wizards going to be distributed? I think you told me once it will be slowly over time and there are different challenges happening. Can you tell us a bit about that to wrap it up?
Well, it's this, everyone knows here is the school.taprootwizard.com. We have the quests, and yeah, that's all I can say. This year maybe it happens.
Okay, so this year maybe it
Yeah,
happens.
2023.
Okay, great. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks again, Far. I'm hosting these spaces every Monday on UTC. And if you cannot make it live, you can subscribe to my newsletter and I send it as a podcast. And it's also on all podcasting platforms. So you can hear it whenever you have a chance. Thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next week.
Thank you. See you next week. Thank you for having me.